The crystal chandelier above table 7 threw fractured light across my trembling hands as I balanced the silver tray, each champagne flute threatening to slip from my sweaty grip. The restaurant's air conditioning couldn't compete with the heat radiating from my uniform. Black silk that clung to places I'd rather forget, reminding me constantly that I was on display, a decorative piece in this gilded cage of wealth I could never afford to enter as anything but staff. My feet ached in the required heels, and the diamond-studded wedding band on my left hand felt heavy, foreign, like a shackle I'd willingly locked around my own finger 3 months ago when desperation finally won over dignity. "Table 7 needs service," Margot hissed behind me, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my shoulder. "Now, Arya. Mr. Moretti doesn't wait." The name hit me like a fist to the stomach. Moretti. No, it couldn't be. My vision blurred at the edges as I forced my legs to move, the tray wobbling dangerously as muscle memory carried me forward through the sea of white tablecloths and hushed conversations. The Belle Vista was New York's most exclusive establishment, where reservations required 6 months' notice and a portfolio fat enough to choke on. I'd been working here for 2 weeks, desperate for the tips that kept my crumbling studio apartment and my growing collection of unpaid medical bills from swallowing me whole. But I'd been careful. So careful. I'd checked the reservation list obsessively, made sure I'd never have to. The scent hit me first. Sandalwood and smoke. Expensive cologne that probably cost more than my monthly rent, layered over something darker, more dangerous. Gunpowder, maybe. Or just the metallic tang of violence that clung to certain men like a second skin. I knew that scent. Had buried my face in it once. Breathed it in like oxygen when I thought I'd found safety in the arms of someone who turned out to be the most dangerous thing I'd ever touched. My eyes lifted against my will. He sat at the center of the circular booth like a king holding court, surrounded by men in tailored suits whose eyes never stopped moving, cataloging exits and threats with the efficiency of trained predators. But they were nothing compared to him. Dante Moretti. 3 years. 3 years since I'd walked away with nothing but the clothes on my back and the knowledge that loving him would destroy me faster than any bullet. 3 years of rebuilding myself from the shattered pieces he'd left behind. He looked different. Harder, somehow, though I wouldn't have thought that possible. His dark hair was shorter, styled with calculated precision. The scar along his jaw, new since I'd known him, only made him more devastating. A brutal slash of imperfection that somehow enhanced the cruel beauty of his face. His suit was midnight black, custom-tailored to shoulders I'd once traced with reverent fingers. And his hands, God, his hands, rested on the table with casual authority. Heavy rings catching the light. He was speaking to the man on his right, his voice a low rumble I felt in my bones despite the distance. He hadn't seen me yet. Maybe he wouldn't. Maybe I could set down the champagne and disappear before his head turned. Our eyes met. The world tilted. For a heartbeat, his expression didn't change. Then something flickered across his face. Surprise, anger, hunger. All there and gone so fast I might have imagined it. But I knew Dante's faces, knew every micro-expression that played across those brutal features. I'd studied him like scripture once, memorizing the subtle shifts that meant danger or desire, or the terrifying combination of both. His eyes dropped to my left hand. To the ring, the temperature in the room plummeted. "Is there a problem?" The question came from the man beside him, dark-skinned with cold eyes, and a gun-shaped bulge beneath his jacket that he didn't bother to hide. "No problem, Marcus." Dante's voice was silk over razor blades, his gaze still locked on mine with an intensity that made my knees threaten to buckle. "Our server was just about to introduce herself. Weren't you, Bella?" The endearment hit like a slap. He'd called me that once, whispered it against my skin in moments when I'd foolishly believed I meant something more than just another possession. My voice came out strangled. I cleared my throat, forced myself to look anywhere but at him, and failed completely. "Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Arya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with champagne, or would you prefer to see the cocktail menu?" Professional. Distant. Like I hadn't once known the taste of his mouth, the weight of his body, the terrible intimacy of his darkest confessions. Arya. He tested my name like wine, rolling it across his tongue. Pretty name for a pretty girl. Tell me, Arya. His eyes dropped to my hand again, lingering on the ring with an expression I couldn't read. Does your husband know you're working here? The question was a landmine. Every instinct I'd developed surviving 3 years in this city screamed at me to run, but my feet stayed rooted to the imported Italian marble. Yes, he knows. A lie. Brad knew I worked at a restaurant, but I'd been careful never to mention which one, never to bring home stories that might reveal I served people who could buy and sell us both without noticing the expense. The sound was non-committal, but I saw the way his jaw tightened, the subtle flex of his fingers against the tablecloth. And he approves of you serving men like us? Wearing that dress? Those shoes? One of the other men chuckled, but cut off abruptly when Dante raised a single finger. My husband trusts me, I said, the words tasting like ash. Brad trusted me because Brad didn't know anything real about me. Didn't know about the year I'd spent as Dante Moretti's lover before I'd realized that loving a Mafia boss meant becoming one more beautiful thing he owned and destroyed in equal measure. Trust. Dante leaned back, his movements liquid and controlled. Dangerous thing. Trust. Fragile. Easy to break. His eyes met mine again, and this time there was no mistaking the threat. I'll have the Macallan 25. Neat. Marcus will have bourbon. Whatever's expensive. Marcus cut in, his attention now fixed on his phone. I took the rest of their orders on autopilot, my handwriting barely legible on the pad as my hand shook. 6 men. Dante at the center, radiating power like a live wire. I recognized 2 of them from before. Lorenzo, his cousin, and a man they called Priest who'd never spoken a word in my presence but whose eyes saw everything. When I finally escaped to the bar, I had to brace myself against the polished wood, my breath coming in short, painful gasps. You okay? Jake, the bartender, gave me a concerned look as he started pouring the drinks. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, I lied, watching him work with professional efficiency. Just long day. But I wasn't fine. I was the opposite of fine, because Dante Moretti didn't do coincidences. Didn't stumble into restaurants by accident. If he was here, it was because he knew I was here. And if he knew I was here, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. You married him. Of all the choices you could have made, Bella, you married that pathetic excuse for a man. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I'd let it stand? Ice flooded my veins. Another text came through before I could process the first. We need to talk. Private room. 10 minutes. Don't make me ask twice. Drinks up, Jake said, sliding the tray across the bar. I stared at it, at the amber liquid in Dante's glass, at my reflection distorted in the crystal. I could refuse. Walk out right now, quit this job, disappear again like I had 3 years ago. But I'd learned the hard way that running from Dante Moretti was like running from gravity. Eventually, inevitably, you crashed back to Earth, and he always made sure the landing hurt. I picked up the tray, my wedding ring catching the light like a target, and walked back toward table 7, with the certain knowledge that my carefully constructed life was about to shatter into 1,000 irreparable pieces. Dante watched me approach with eyes that promised retribution, possession, and something darker that made my traitorous heart race, despite the terror freezing my blood. He raised his glass in a mock toast as I set it before him, his fingers deliberately brushing mine. To unexpected reunions, he murmured, loud enough only for me to hear, and to teaching faithless wives about consequences. The glass was at his lips when I saw it. A flash of movement at the restaurant's entrance, a face I recognized from the news. Detective Sarah Morrison, Organized Crime Unit. She was looking directly at our table. And Dante, following my stricken gaze, saw her too. His expression went flat and cold, the temperature around him dropping to Arctic levels. He set down the glass with exaggerated care, and when he looked back at me, I saw murder in his eyes. Did you... His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried more menace than any shout. Did you bring her here, Arya? No, I didn't. I would never. But the damage was done. One of his men was already moving, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. Another had his hand inside his jacket. The entire booth had transformed from elegant dinner party to coiled violence in the space of a heartbeat. "Private room," Dante said, standing in one fluid motion. "Now." It wasn't a request. His hand closed around my wrist, not bruising, never quite bruising, but with the unbreakable grip of a man who'd learned long ago how to hold something without leaving marks. And he was pulling me toward the back of the restaurant, toward the private dining rooms reserved for VIPs who valued discretion above all else. I stumbled in my heels, the tray crashing to the floor behind us, champagne and broken crystal painting the marble in glittering destruction. Margot's scandalized gasp echoed in my ears. Other diners turned to stare, but nobody moved to help me, because everyone in this restaurant knew exactly who Dante Moretti was, and nobody was stupid enough to interfere with a man who could make problems, and people, disappear with a single phone call. The door to the private room slammed shut behind us, and I was alone with the most dangerous man I'd ever loved, wearing another man's ring, with a detective in the building, and my entire world crumbling around me like a house of marked cards. Dante released my wrist and stepped back, his chest rising and falling with barely controlled rage. "Start talking," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "And Bella, don't even think about lying to me. Not now. Not ever again." The private room smelled of leather and old money, walls paneled in dark mahogany that absorbed sound like a confessional. A single table dominated the space, set for an intimate dinner that would never happen, and the chandelier above cast shadows that turned Dante's face into a study of brutal angles and darkness. I pressed my back against the door, my heart hammering so violently I was certain he could hear it. "I didn't call anyone," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "I didn't even know you'd be here tonight. I swear." He moved like a predator, circling me with measured steps, hands in his pockets. A deceptively casual pose that did nothing to hide the coiled tension in his frame. "You expect me to believe that? After you vanished 3 years ago without a word, without a trace? You just happened to be working at the restaurant where I'm conducting business? I needed a job, Dante. The Belle Vista pays well. That's all. That's all." He laughed, a sound without humor. "You always were a terrible liar, Bella. Your left eye twitches when you're scared, just like it's doing now." I forced myself not to touch my face, not to give him any more ammunition than he already had. He stopped in front of me, close enough that his cologne enveloped me, dragging me back to memories I'd spent 3 years trying to bury, late nights in his penthouse, his hands in my hair. The way he'd whispered promises against my skin that I'd been naive enough to believe. The ring. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "Tell me about the ring." My fingers instinctively moved to cover it, a protective gesture that made his eyes flash with something violent. "I got married 4 months ago. His name." "That's none of your—" His hand shot out, not touching me, but slamming against the door beside my head with enough force to make me flinch. The rings on his fingers clicked against the wood like a death knell. "His name. Brad." The word came out on a whisper. "Brad Sullivan." I watched recognition flicker across his face, followed by something that looked almost like amusement if it weren't so cold. "Sullivan? The accountant from Queens?" He pulled out his phone, thumbs moving with practiced efficiency. "Works at Palmer and Associates, drives a 10-year-old Honda, lives in a studio in Astoria that still has the original fixtures from 1987. Horror crawled up my spine. "How do you—" "I know everything, Arya. I've known where you've been since the day you left." He held up his phone, showing me a photo. Brad and me at our courthouse wedding. My dress a simple white sheath from Macy's. His smile wide and genuine, and completely unaware that he'd married a woman with a target on her back. "I know what time you wake up, what coffee you drink, that you take the N train to work because you're too stubborn to accept money from your mediocre husband. I know," his voice hardened to steel, "that you've been lying to him about where you've been, about who you were." The room spun. I'd been so careful, so meticulous about covering my tracks. But I'd forgotten the fundamental truth about Dante Moretti. He didn't let go of what belonged to him. And I'd belonged to him once. "You've been watching me," I breathed. "For 3 years. Every single day." He pocketed his phone, his eyes never leaving mine. "Did you really think I'd let you go that easily? That you could just walk away from me and play house with some nobody who can't even afford to keep you in the shoes you're wearing right now? He's a good man. He's beneath you." Dante's hand came up, his knuckles grazing my cheek with shocking gentleness that made the threat of him even more terrifying. "You were made for silk and champagne, Bella. For penthouses with views that make the city look like a toy, not for cramped studios with water stains on the ceiling and a husband who thinks Olive Garden is fine dining." I jerked away from his touch, anger finally breaking through the fear. "At least he doesn't kill people for a living." The words hung in the air between us, electric and dangerous. Dante's expression didn't change, but I felt the shift in him, the way violence lived just beneath his skin, waiting for permission to surface. "Careful," he said softly. "You forget yourself." "I haven't forgotten anything. That's why I left." I lifted my chin, channeling 3 years of therapy and self-help books, and desperate attempts to become someone who wasn't defined by the man who'd owned her. I left because staying with you meant losing myself, becoming just another pretty thing in your collection. I deserved better than that. Better. He tasted the word like poison. "You think that spineless accountant is better? He doesn't know you, Arya. Doesn't know that you take your coffee with 2 sugars and a shot of vanilla. Doesn't know that you have nightmares about your mother's funeral. Doesn't know—" His hand moved to my throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a reminder of how easily he could break me. "That you used to beg me to hurt you just a little, just enough to feel alive." Heat flooded my face. "Don't." "Why? Because it's true? Because you're trying to pretend you're someone you're not?" His thumb traced my pulse, feeling it race beneath his touch. "You can marry 1,000 Brad Sullivans, Bella. You can work at restaurants and ride the subway and pretend you're just another struggling New Yorker. But I know what you are, what you need. You don't know anything about what I need. Don't I?" He leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "Then why are you shaking? Why is your pulse hammering like you want to run and stay in equal measure? Why?" His nose brushed my temple, inhaling. "Can I smell how much you've missed this?" I shoved at his chest, putting space between us even though every traitorous cell in my body screamed to close the distance. "You're delusional, and you're a coward." He straightened, adjusting his cuffs with practiced ease. "You ran because you were afraid of how much you wanted it. Wanted me. Wanted the life I could give you. I ran because I wanted to live past 30. The truth burst out before I could stop it. Do you know how many women I saw come and go, Dante? How many girlfriends who ended up in the river or disappeared to Italy when they became inconvenient? I was next. I could feel it. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even hurt, though I didn't trust myself to read him anymore. "You thought I would kill you. I thought you'd own me until there was nothing left to own." The silence stretched taut between us, broken only by muffled sounds from the restaurant beyond. Clinking glasses, polite laughter, the soundtrack of a world that felt impossibly far away. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. The detective is gone. False alarm. He typed something, then looked back at me. "But this conversation isn't over, not by a long shot." "What do you want from me, Dante?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "I want—" He stopped, shook his head. "That's not the right question, Bella. The right question is what I'm going to do about the fact that you're married to another man." Dread coiled in my stomach. "You can't. He has nothing to do with this, with us. Leave him alone. Leave him alone." Dante laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You're wearing his ring, sleeping in his bed. Playing wife to a man who has no idea that his precious Arya spent a year as a mob boss's whore. And you want me to leave him alone?" The slap happened before I could think, my palm connecting with his face with a crack that echoed off the mahogany walls. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then his hand shot out, catching my wrist in an iron grip, spinning me around and pressing me against the wall with his body, his weight pinning me in place. "There she is," he breathed against my neck. "There's the fire I remember, the woman who wasn't afraid to fight back." I struggled, but it was useless. He was 6'2" of solid muscle and controlled violence, and I was 5'4" in heels I could barely walk in. "Let me go." "No." His free hand came up, fingers threading through my hair, tilting my head back to expose my throat. "Not until you understand something. You don't get to slap me and walk away. You don't get to marry someone else and pretend I don't exist. And you definitely don't get to look at me with those eyes and expect me to be civilized about it, Dante." "I've been patient, Arya. Do you have any idea how patient? I could have taken you back 100 times, could have had your husband disappear with a single phone call, could have dragged you back to where you belong, and made you remember exactly who you are." His lips brushed my ear, but I waited. I watched. "I let you play pretend, because I thought eventually you'd realize the truth on your own." "What truth?" I hated how breathless I sounded. "That you're mine. You've always been mine, and that cheap ring on your finger doesn't change that." The door handle rattled. Dante released me instantly, stepping back and straightening his jacket as if nothing had happened. I stumbled, catching myself against the wall, my chest heaving. Marcus stuck his head in, his expression carefully neutral. "Boss." "Lorenzo says we need to move. The detective's asking questions at the bar." "Give me 5 minutes." "We don't have 5 minutes." The words were quiet, but absolute. Marcus nodded and disappeared. Dante pulled a business card from his pocket, pressing it into my hand. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. The address on the back. Come alone and come ready to have a real conversation about your situation." "My situation?" "Your husband owes money to some very bad people, Arya. People who don't take kindly to accountants who skim from their accounts." His smile was razor sharp. "Funny thing, the company he works for, they handle finances for several of my competitors. And Brad's been careless, very careless." The room tilted. "That's not... He wouldn't..." "Check his laptop. The browser history he thinks he deleted. The offshore accounts he set up using your social security number." Dante moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. "You married a thief, Bella, and now his debts are yours. Unless what?" He looked back at me, and in his eyes I saw calculation, possession, and something that might have been genuine concern if I didn't know better. "Unless you let me fix it. 8 p.m. Don't be late." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the private room with a business card burning in my palm, and the terrible certainty that my life had just been ripped apart for the second time by the same man. I looked down at the card. On the back, in his precise handwriting, LaDonna Tower, penthouse. Come home. My legs gave out. I slid down the wall, landing in a heap of black silk and shattered illusions, the wedding ring on my finger suddenly feeling less like a promise and more like a noose. Outside, I heard the sounds of Dante's men leaving, the subtle shift in atmosphere that came when predators exited the building. And beneath it all, I heard the death knell of my normal life, my safe life, the life I'd built on lies and wishful thinking. Because Dante Moretti didn't make empty threats. And if Brad really had stolen from the wrong people, if I was implicated, then I had exactly 24 hours to decide between the devil I'd escaped and the destruction of everything I'd tried to become. The card crumpled in my fist, but I didn't throw it away. I made it through the rest of my shift on autopilot, my hands steady even as my world crumbled. Margot pulled me aside twice, her sharp eyes cataloging every crack in my composure, but I smiled and lied and pretended that having my past collide with my present hadn't left me bleeding internally. The N train home was packed with Friday night crowds, drunk college kids and exhausted workers and couples pressed together in the artificial intimacy of public transport. I stood by the doors, gripping the pole with white knuckles, Dante's card a brand against my skin through my purse. Your husband owes money to some very bad people. It couldn't be true. Brad was boring, predictable, safe. Everything Dante wasn't. He worked 9 to 6, came home smelling like copy toner and weak coffee, fell asleep watching whatever procedural drama I could tolerate. He didn't have secrets. But then again, neither did I. Supposedly. The studio apartment was dark when I stumbled through the door at 1 a.m., my feet screaming in protest as I kicked off the heels. Brad's snoring drifted from the bedroom, Really just a corner with a curtain we pretended created privacy, and his laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. Screen dark, but power light still glowing. I stood there for 10 minutes, arguing with myself. Then I opened it. His password was our wedding date. Simple, sentimental, the kind of easy security that made hackers weep with joy. The screen bloomed to life, showing a spreadsheet for some client account, rows of numbers that meant nothing to me. Check his browser history, the offshore accounts he set up using your social security number. My fingers moved to the browser, pulling up the history. Deleted, like Dante said, but I'd learned a few things in my year with him, including that deleted never really meant gone. 20 minutes and a recovery software download later, I was staring at a list of websites that made my stomach turn. Cryptocurrency exchanges, offshore banking forums, a site called Clean Money Solutions that promised anonymous transfers, and buried in his documents folder, hidden inside a subfolder labeled Tax Returns 2019, I found them. Account statements, transfers. My social security number linked to accounts in the Cayman Islands holding amounts that made my vision blur. $230,000. Skimmed in increments small enough not to trigger immediate alarms, moved through enough channels to obscure the trail, all leading back to accounts that bore my name alongside Brad's. I was going to be sick. The bedroom curtain scraped open. Brad emerged, squinting in the kitchen light, his thinning hair stuck up at odd angles. "Babe, you okay? It's late." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. This man I'd married because he was safe, because he asked nothing of me, because he'd seemed like the opposite of everything that had almost destroyed me. "Who are you?" The question came out flat. He blinked, confused. "What? Arya, are you drunk?" "The accounts. The offshore accounts. The $200,000 you stole using my information." I turned the laptop around, showing him the evidence. "Who the hell are you, Brad?" The color drained from his face. For a moment he just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Then he lunged forward, slamming the laptop shut. "You had no right." "I had no right." Hysteria bubbled up my throat. "You used my social security number. You made me an accomplice to whatever the hell this is." "It's not what you think." But his eyes were darting, looking for exits, for excuses. "I was going to tell you. I just needed. The firm was going under, and I thought if I could just borrow. You stole from clients and you call it borrowing? They're criminals." The words burst out of him. "The firm handles money for organized crime, Arya. I'm not stealing from innocent people. I'm taking from murderers and drug dealers and you didn't think they'd notice?" I laughed, a broken sound. "You didn't think people like that would come looking for their money?" His silence was answer enough. "Oh God." I pressed my hands to my face. "Oh God, Brad, what did you do? Who did you steal from?" "I don't know. The accounts are anonymous. That's the whole point of using our firm. Plausible deniability. Layers of..." "Dante Moretti." I looked up at him. "Did you steal from Dante Moretti?" The name hit him like a physical blow. "How do you..." "I never told you..." "Answer the question." Maybe. I don't know." "His name's on some of the accounts Palmer handles, but there are dozens of..." He stopped, really looking at me for the first time. "How do you know that name?" I should have told him then. Should have explained that the man he'd stolen from was the same man who'd owned me, body and soul, for 12 months of my life. That I'd run from Dante and somehow managed to run straight toward a man who'd put us both in his crosshairs. But I couldn't form the words. He was at the restaurant tonight. I stood, my legs unsteady. "He knows about you, about us, about the money." Brad's face went from white to gray. No, that's not. How could he? Because he's Dante Moretti, Brad. Because he owns half this city and has people everywhere and apparently has been watching me for 3 years waiting for me to screw up. The truth exploded out of me. "And congratulations, you just handed him the perfect reason to destroy us both." "Watching you? 3 years?" Brad stepped back, and I saw the moment understanding dawned. "You knew him? Before? You knew him and you didn't think to mention that your ex-boyfriend is a mob boss?" "He wasn't my boyfriend." The words tasted like ashes. "He was... It's complicated. Uncomplicate it, right now. So I told him. Not everything. There were parts of my time with Dante that belonged to darkness and locked rooms and things I'd never speak aloud. But enough. The year I'd spent as his lover, the escalating possession, the women who disappeared, my desperate escape, and 3 years of looking over my shoulder. Brad listened with an expression that cycled through disbelief, horror, and finally, calculation. So you're telling me, he said slowly, that you had a relationship with one of the most dangerous men in New York, and you married me without mentioning it. I was trying to start over. You used me. His voice went cold. Jesus Christ, Arya. You married me because you thought I was safe. Boring. Beneath his notice. That's not... And now we're both screwed because I stole from him and you brought him right to our door. The accusation hung between us, and I couldn't even argue because he was right. I had used him, had seen his simple, uncomplicated life, and climbed into it like a shelter, never considering that my past might follow. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. TikTok Bella. I'm a patient man, but even I have limits. 8 p.m. tomorrow. Don't make me come get you. I showed Brad the message. He wants to meet. Says he can fix this. Fix this. Brad laughed bitterly. Men like that don't fix things, Arya. They own them. He's going to want payment, and I guarantee it won't be in cash. So what do you suggest? We run? Disappear? I gestured at the laptop. You've stolen from the mob, Brad, from multiple families if what you're saying is true. Where exactly do you think we can go that they won't find us? He had no answer. Another text. Your husband looks scared. Good. He should be. But you don't need to be. Come alone tomorrow and I'll make sure little Brad gets to keep his kneecaps. Refuse, and I'll let the Valentinos know who's been helping himself to their retirement fund. Your choice. The Valentinos. Even I knew that name, a family that made Dante look merciful by comparison. I have to go, I whispered. If I don't, they'll kill you. And if you do, what happens to you? I looked at my husband, this man I'd married in a desperate bid for normalcy, and saw the fear in his eyes, not for me, for himself. I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to find out. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. I called in sick to work, earning a sharp lecture from Margot about reliability, but I couldn't imagine serving tables with the sword of Damocles hanging over my head. Instead, I spent the day researching, reading everything I could find about the Valentino family, about offshore account seizures, about what happened to people who stole from the mob. None of it was encouraging. Brad left for work without saying goodbye, his face a mask of resentment and terror. I heard him on the phone in the hallway, voice low and urgent, probably calling a lawyer. Fat lot of good that would do. At 7 p.m. I started getting ready. I had no idea what one wore to negotiate with a former lover turned vengeful mob boss, so I settled for black jeans, a silk blouse, and boots I could run in if necessary. I left my wedding ring on, partly as armor, partly as a reminder of what was at stake. LaDonna Tower rose like a monument to excess in Manhattan's financial district, all gleaming glass and sharp angles. The lobby was marble and gold, with a security desk manned by 2 guards who took one look at my name and waved me through without question. The elevator to the penthouse required a keycard. One of the guards handed it to me with a knowing look that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you," he said. "Top floor. Elevator opens directly into the residence." My stomach churned as the elevator climbed, floor numbers ticking by with hypnotic speed. I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Pale face, dark eyes too large, hair I'd left loose because Dante had always preferred it that way. I looked like a sacrifice. The elevator chimed, the doors opened, and I stepped into a memory. The penthouse hadn't changed. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that glittered like scattered diamonds. Minimalist furniture in blacks and grays. Art on the walls worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. And through the windows, visible through the open plan, a terrace with the hot tub where Dante had once... "You came." I spun. He stood in the entrance to what I remembered as the bedroom, wearing black slacks and a white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar. Barefoot. Relaxed. Except for his eyes, which tracked my every movement with predatory focus. "You didn't leave me much choice," There's always a choice, Bella. You could have run again. Could have grabbed your worthless husband and tried for Mexico. He moved into the living room, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. But you didn't, because you know how this ends. How does it end, Dante? He held out a glass. I didn't take it. That depends entirely on you. He set both glasses on the coffee table, settling onto the leather sofa with casual grace. Sit. We have things to discuss. I'd rather stand. Suit yourself. He leaned back, studying me. You look good. Thin, tired, clearly not sleeping well, but good. Marriage suits you less than I'd hoped. Get to the point. The point. He smiled without warmth. The point is that your husband has stolen approximately $230,000 from accounts connected to me, the Valentinos, and the Calabrese family. That's 3 of the 5 families running this city, in case you're counting. The kind of mistake people don't recover from. My knees threatened to buckle. I'd hoped, stupidly, that maybe it was just Dante, that we could somehow contain this. The Valentinos want him dead, Dante continued conversationally. The Calabreses want him, and you dead, since your name is on the accounts. And me? He took a slow sip of his drink. I want what I've always wanted, which is you. Here, where you belong. The words landed like a bomb in the quiet room. That's insane. Is it? He set down his glass. I can make this go away, Arya. All of it. I can tell the Valentinos that Brad was acting on my orders, that the money was moved for legitimate business purposes. I can clean up the accounts, remove your name, make it so the Calabreses never even knew you existed. I can save your husband's pathetic life and give you a fresh start. In exchange for what? His smile was slow, dangerous, inevitable. In exchange for you coming back to me. Willingly. Permanently. The city lights blurred beyond the windows, 1,000 lives continuing while mine hung suspended in the balance. I stared at Dante, searching for the catch, the hidden trap in his offer. You want me to leave my husband? Come back to you. Just like that. Just like that, he agreed. You divorce Brad. Quietly, quickly, with a settlement generous enough that he won't ask questions. You move back in here, and you stop pretending to be someone you're not. And if I refuse, he stood, closing the distance between us with measured steps. Then I make a phone call. By tomorrow morning, Brad Sullivan will be found in pieces scattered across 3 boroughs. The Valentinos are creative when it comes to punishment. And you... His fingers traced the line of my jaw. You'll spend whatever time you have left knowing you could have saved him and chose not to. That's not a choice. That's coercion. Call it what you want, Bella. The result is the same. His hand moved to the back of my neck. Not threatening, just possessive. You always did have a hero complex. Always wanting to save people who didn't deserve saving. First your mother, then me, now your thief of a husband. Don't talk about my mother. Why not? She's the reason you're standing here, isn't she? The reason you think love means sacrifice. His thumb brushed the pulse point beneath my ear. You watched her drink herself to death trying to save your father's memory. Watched her give up everything for a ghost. And you learned all the wrong lessons. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You don't know anything about what I learned. I know you married Brad because he was safe. Because he'd never make you feel the things I made you feel. That terrifying, exhilarating loss of control. His breath was warm against my temple. I know you've spent 3 years running from the truth that you're not like other people, Arya. You're not built for white picket fences and Monday morning carpools. You're built for this, for danger and passion and a life that burns bright even if it burns fast. That's not true, isn't it? He stepped back, giving me space I didn't want and needed desperately. Then explain why your pulse is racing. Why you're leaning toward me instead of away. Why you haven't slapped me again or run for the elevator. Because I couldn't. Because despite everything, the fear, the anger, the 3 years of therapy trying to untangle myself from him, there was a part of me that had never left this penthouse, never stopped being his, and he knew it. I hate you, I whispered. I know. He returned to the sofa, picking up his drink. But you also love me. You've always loved me, even when you were terrified of me, even when you ran. Especially then. Love isn't supposed to feel like drowning. No, it's supposed to feel like flying. His eyes met mine over the rim of his glass, and occasionally crashing. But at least you feel something, which is more than you can say about your marriage to Brad the Boring. I wanted to argue, to defend the quiet life I'd built, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. 4 months married, and I couldn't remember the last time Brad had made me feel anything beyond mild contentment tinged with guilt. What would it look like? I asked, hating myself for even considering it. If I agreed, what would you expect? Interest flickered in his expression. Honestly, I expect you to fight me at every turn for the first month, to test boundaries, to look for exits, to convince yourself you can still escape. He set down his drink. But eventually you'll remember why you stayed before. Why leaving nearly killed you even though staying was killing you faster. You're insane. Probably. He smiled. And for a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen for, the one who'd shown me glimpses of vulnerability between the violence. But I'm your kind of insane, Bella, and we both know it. My phone buzzed. Brad's name on the screen. Where are you? The police were here. They have questions about the accounts. I didn't say anything, but they know something. Please come home. I showed Dante the message. The police. Not my doing. He frowned, pulling out his own phone and typing rapidly. Probably Palmer and associates covering their own asses. Doesn't matter. I can handle it. But we're running out of time for you to deliberate. You're asking me to give up everything. I'm asking you to stop lying to yourself. He stood, moving to the windows. You want to know what the last 3 years have been like for me? Watching you play house with a man who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you? Watching you work yourself to exhaustion at jobs beneath you because you're too proud to accept that you were made for better things. I was made for my own choices. You were made for me. He turned, and the raw hunger in his eyes made my breath catch. I knew it the moment I saw you. This terrified, beautiful girl serving drinks at that charity gala, trying so hard to be invisible. But I saw you, Arya, saw straight through to everything you were hiding, and I wanted— His voice roughened. I wanted to own every piece of you. And you did. You owned me completely. Do you have any idea what that was like? Losing myself piece by piece until I didn't recognize my own reflection? I know I pushed too hard. Asked for too much too fast. He crossed back to me, and this time when he reached for me, I didn't pull away. But I was trying to show you who you could be without all the fear holding you back. Without the voice in your head telling you that wanting things made you weak or selfish or wrong. His hands framed my face, tilting it up to his. I can be better this time, he murmured. I can give you space, let you keep parts of yourself separate. But I can't let you go. I've tried. God knows I've tried to move on, to find someone who makes me feel even a fraction of what you do. But there's no one else, Bella. There's only you. Dante? 1 month. His forehead pressed against mine. Give me 1 month. Stay here. Let me prove that this can work. If after 30 days you still want to go back to Brad and your studio apartment and your safe, boring life, I'll let you walk away. I'll clean up the mess with the families, and I'll never contact you again. You're lying. I'm not. His voice carried an edge of something that might have been desperation if men like Dante Moretti were capable of desperation. I'll put it in writing if you want, a contract. My word witnessed by my attorney and notarized. 30 days, and if you choose to leave, you're free. I pulled back to search his face. Why would you risk that? Because I'm betting I can make you remember. His thumb traced my lower lip. Remember what it felt like when it was good between us. Before the fear. Before you convinced yourself that the only way to survive me was to run. My phone buzzed again. Brad, increasingly frantic. They're talking about arrest warrants, about interstate fraud. Arya, please, I need you. I looked at Dante, at the man offering me a devil's bargain wrapped in silk and promises. 1 month of my life in exchange for saving Brad's. 1 month of stepping back into the fire to keep everyone else from burning. If I do this, I said slowly, I have conditions. Name them. Brad goes free. Completely free. The families forget he exists, the police investigation disappears, and he gets to walk away with enough money to start over somewhere else. Done. And I want it in writing. Everything. The timeline, the conditions, the guarantee that I can leave after 30 days without consequence. You'll have it by morning. And I swallowed hard. Nothing physical. Not until I'm ready. If I'm ever ready. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or challenge accepted. I won't force you, Arya. I never have. His hands fell away from my face. But I'm not going to pretend I don't want you. That I don't remember exactly how you taste, how you sound when you... Don't! My voice cracked. Please don't make this harder than it already is. He nodded slowly. I'll have Marcus pick up your things tomorrow. Tonight you can sleep in the guest room or... Guest room. Guest room it is. He moved toward the hallway, pausing at the entrance. For the record, I'm sorry for how things ended before, for not seeing how much I was asking of you. For thinking that possession and love were the same thing. The apology landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I knew about him. Dante? The guest room is the second door on the left. Fresh towels in the ensuite. Clothes in the closet that should fit. We can discuss the details in the morning. His expression was unreadable. Welcome home, Bella. Then he disappeared into the master bedroom, leaving me standing in the living room of my gilded cage, wondering if I'd just saved my husband's life or sold my own soul. I didn't sleep. The guest room was luxurious, king bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, a view of the harbor, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, but every creak of the building, every distant siren, made my heart race with the certainty that I'd made a catastrophic mistake. At 3 a.m., I gave up and wandered to the living room. The city never truly slept. Below, I could see late-night taxis and delivery trucks, and the occasional drunk stumbling home. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that somewhere above them, a woman had just bartered herself for a man who didn't deserve it. Couldn't sleep either. I spun. Dante stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, wearing only black silk pajama pants that hung low on his hips. Scars I didn't remember marked his torso. Silver lines that spoke of violence survived. He'd always been beautiful in a brutal way, but time and trauma had refined him into something almost unbearably attractive. I looked away, just thinking. About how to escape, about whether Brad's worth it. He moved into the room, maintaining careful distance. For what it's worth, I don't think he is. But I understand why you're doing this. You have a savior complex. It's one of the things I love most about you, and what will probably destroy you in the end. Love. I tested the word. You love me. Did you doubt it? You have a strange way of showing love. I never claimed to be good at it. He poured himself a drink from the bar cart. Whiskey, neat, the same as always. My father loved my mother by keeping her locked in a house in Sicily for 20 years. My uncle loved his wife by having every man who looked at her killed. Love in my family is complicated. That's not love. That's ownership. Is there a difference? He took a slow sip. You loved your mother, watched her destroy herself and couldn't stop her. Is that so different from what I did to you? Loving you so much it became destructive. The comparison hit too close to home. My mother was sick. So am I. Just a different kind of sick. He set down his glass. The difference is, I'm trying to get better. Trying to learn how to love you without crushing you. That's what this month is about, Arya. Not trapping you. Teaching myself that I can have you without destroying you. And if you can't learn, then you leave. And I spend the rest of my life knowing I had everything I wanted and ruined it twice. His smile was self-deprecating. Seems like sufficient motivation to change, doesn't it? I wanted to hate him. Wanted to hold on to the anger and fear that had sustained me for 3 years. But standing here in the pre-dawn darkness, watching him be unexpectedly vulnerable, I felt the foundations of my resolve beginning to crack. I should go back to bed, I said. Probably. But he didn't move, and neither did I. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. Then his phone buzzed on the bar, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. His expression went cold. "Excuse me." He answered in Italian, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet I remembered too well. I caught fragments, someone's name, coordinates, a terse command. When he hung up, the vulnerable man from moments before had vanished, replaced by the mob boss who ruled through fear. "Problem?" I asked. "Nothing you need to worry about." But his jaw was tight, and he was already moving toward the bedroom. "Stay inside today. Don't go near the windows. Marcus will be here by 8 with your things." "Dante, what's going on?" He paused, looking back at me with eyes gone flat and dangerous. "The Calabresi's don't believe my story about Brad. They're sending someone to verify. It's being handled, but until it is, you're safer here than anywhere else in the city." Fear spiked through me. Sending someone to verify how? By questioning him, directly. His expression softened fractionally. "I told you I'd keep him safe, and I will. But right now I need you to trust me and stay put." Then he was gone, the master bedroom door closing with finality, leaving me alone with the growing certainty that I'd stepped back into a world where violence was casual, death was business, and my safe, boring life was burning to ashes 20 blocks away. I moved to the windows despite his warning, watching the sun bleed pink and gold across the horizon. Somewhere out there, Brad was learning what it meant to steal from the mob, and I was here, in a cage made of bulletproof glass and false promises, wondering if saving him meant destroying myself all over again. My reflection stared back at me from the window. Pale and ghost-like. I didn't recognize her anymore, wasn't sure I ever had. Morning came with the smell of fresh coffee and the sound of voices in the kitchen. I'd finally dozed off around 5, tangled in sheets that smelled faintly of Dante's cologne, and woken to find myself still trapped in a penthouse that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. I dressed in clothes from the guest room closet, designer jeans that fit perfectly, a cashmere sweater in deep green. Everything in my exact size because of course Dante knew my measurements. He'd probably had them memorized since the first time he'd undressed me. The thought made my skin flush with something I refused to acknowledge as anything but anger. Marcus stood in the kitchen with another man I didn't recognize, both wearing suits that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holsters underneath. They stopped talking when I appeared, Marcus offering a nod that might have been respectful or might have been mocking. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said, the name deliberate. "Coffee?" "It's just area." I poured myself a cup from the French press, my hands steadier than I felt. "Where's Dante?" "Handling business. He'll be back by noon." Marcus gestured to the island where pastries from some expensive bakery sat arranged like art. "You should eat. It's going to be a long day." "Is Brad—" I couldn't finish the question. "Your husband is alive and unharmed. For now." The other man spoke for the first time, his accent thick Brooklyn. "Boss is dealing with the Calabresi situation personally. Should be resolved by tonight. Should be. Not would be." The distinction wasn't lost on me. I nibbled at a croissant I couldn't taste, watching the two men pretend I wasn't there as they discussed business in code. Numbers, locations, names that meant nothing to me, but clearly meant violence to them. This was the world I'd stepped back into, one where death was discussed over coffee and pastries like weather patterns. My phone buzzed. Brad's number. I grabbed it, stepping away from Marcus and his companion. "Brad, are you okay?" "Am I okay?" His voice was high, panicked. "Arya, there were men here. Men with guns. They took my laptop, my files, they asked questions about you. About how we met, when we got married. Why you never mentioned knowing Moretti." "What did you tell them?" "The truth." What else was I supposed to say? He was breathing hard, probably pacing the apartment. "They know everything, Arya. They know you used to be his whatever, and they're not happy about it. They kept asking if this was some kind of setup, if you were still working with him." My stomach dropped. "Working with him? Brad, I haven't seen Dante in 3 years. That's not what they think. They think you married me to get close to the firm, to help Moretti steal from the other families." His laugh was hysterical. "They think you're a plant, a spy." And I told them that was insane, that you were just a waitress when I met you. But they didn't believe me. "Brad, Listen to me. No, you listen. I'm leaving. I'm taking what I can and I'm getting out of the city before they come back. My cousin in Montana said I could. You can't run. If you run, they'll hunt you down and it'll be so much worse. I glanced at Marcus, who was watching me with sharp eyes. Dante's handling it. He's talking to them right now. Dante's handling it. Brad's voice went bitter. Of course. Dante. Always Dante. Tell me something, Arya. When you married me, was any of it real? Or was I always just the consolation prize? The question hung between us, and I found I had no good answer. Had I loved Brad? Maybe. In the way you love safety, comfort, the absence of fear. But it wasn't the consuming, destructive thing I'd felt for Dante. Wasn't the kind of love that burned you alive from the inside out. I'm sorry, I whispered. I never meant for any of this to happen. Yeah. Well, he sighed, defeated. I'm sorry, too. Sorry I stole from the mob. Sorry I dragged you into this. Sorry I thought I could be enough for someone like you. The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, feeling the last threads of my normal life snap one by one. Boss wants to see you. Marcus's voice cut through my spiral. He's at the warehouse on Pier 47. I'll drive you. I thought he said to stay here. Plans changed. His expression was unreadable. The Calabreses want to meet you. Verify you're not playing both sides. Boss figured it's better you're there with him than they send someone here. Fear clawed up my throat. I'm not ready for this. Nobody ever is. He grabbed a set of keys from the counter. But you're going anyway. Unless you want to make this harder on everyone. The warehouse was exactly what I'd expected. Gray concrete, broken windows, the smell of oil and rust, and something darker I didn't want to identify. Marcus led me through a maze of corridors to a large room where shipping containers formed walls within walls, creating a space that felt both vast and claustrophobic. Dante stood in the center with 6 other men, all wearing the kind of expensive suits that seemed obscene in such surroundings. He looked up when I entered, his expression flickering through relief, anger, and something almost tender before settling back into cold professionalism. Gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying authority, my guest has arrived. One of the men stepped forward, older, silver-haired, with eyes like chips of ice. This is the woman? The one you claim you've been watching for 3 years? Arya Morrison, previously Arya Chen before she married that idiot Sullivan. Dante gestured for me to come closer. I did, on legs that felt like water. Arya, meet Antonio Calabrese. He has some questions for you. Antonio circled me slowly, assessing. You worked for Moretti before. As what exactly? I didn't work for him. We were involved. He smiled without warmth. Interesting word. And you left him 3 years ago. Why? Because I wanted a normal life, and found it with an accountant who steals from us. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something heavy and cloying. Convenient timing, no. I didn't know Brad was stealing from anyone. I didn't even know he worked with people like you, people like us. Antonio laughed. You hear that, Dante? She's uncomfortable saying criminals. How delicate. She's not involved. Dante's voice held a warning. She married Sullivan because she was running from me. The theft was his stupidity, not her design. And yet her name is on the accounts. Because Sullivan used her social security number without her knowledge. It's identity theft, Antonio, not conspiracy. Another man spoke up, younger, with a scar bisecting his eyebrow. How do we know Moretti isn't playing us? Using the girl as a front to steal from us while pretending to investigate. The room went silent. I felt the shift in atmosphere, the way violence suddenly became a possibility instead of just a threat. Are you questioning my word, Luca? Dante's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet. I'm questioning the coincidence. You lose your woman, she marries our accountant, money disappears, and suddenly you're the hero cleaning up the mess? Luca shrugged. Seems like a convenient narrative. Then what do you suggest? Dante asked. But I heard the steel beneath the question. A demonstration. Proof that she's not working with you. Luca pulled a gun from his jacket, checking the magazine with casual efficiency. If she's really just an innocent caught in the middle, she won't mind answering some questions under pressure. Put the gun away. Dante moved between us, his body a wall. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Your protection is exactly what we're questioning." Antonio's voice was mild, but his eyes were calculating. "Luca has a point. We need assurance. And if she has nothing to hide, she has nothing to prove to you." Dante's hand moved to his own weapon. "This conversation is over." The standoff stretched taut as a wire. I stood frozen, watching these men who trafficked in death decide my fate with the detachment of people choosing dinner. Then Antonio's phone rang. He answered, listened, his expression changing from suspicion to surprise to calculation. "I see." "Yes." "No, that changes things." He hung up, looking at Dante with new eyes. "That was my accountant. The money's back. All of it. Plus interest for the inconvenience." As I promised. Dante's posture didn't relax. "Sullivan's accounts have been cleaned. The money returned to its proper owners through appropriate channels. Your books are balanced. And Sullivan himself is leaving the city tonight with enough cash to start over somewhere else. Far from New York, far from any family business." Dante's hand found my lower back. Possessive. "Consider the matter closed." Antonio studied us both, then nodded slowly. "Very well. But Moretti, if this happens again, if there's even a hint that you're using your women to run games on us, we won't be so understanding. There won't be a next time. See that there isn't." Antonio gestured to his men. "We're done here." They filed out, Luca giving me one last assessing look that promised this wasn't over in his mind, even if it was in Antonio's. When the warehouse was finally empty except for Dante, Marcus, and me, I felt my knees buckle. Dante caught me, his arms coming around me with the muscle memory of 1,000 similar embraces. "It's okay," he murmured against my hair. "You're safe. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not really. Because standing there in his arms, breathing in his scent, feeling the solid strength of him against me, I realized the terrible truth I'd been avoiding for 3 years. I'd never stopped being his. The running, the marriage, the carefully constructed normal life, all of it had been theater, a performance I'd staged for myself because admitting the truth was too terrifying. I loved him. Still. Always. Despite the danger, despite the darkness, despite knowing that loving Dante Moretti was like loving a hurricane. Beautiful and destructive and utterly beyond control. "Take me home," I whispered. He pulled back to look at me, searching my face. "Home?" "The penthouse. Take me home." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something that might have been hope if men like him believed in such things. "Arya, don't." I pressed my fingers to his lips. "Don't say anything. Just take me home. Please." The penthouse was exactly as we'd left it, but everything felt different now. Dante dismissed Marcus with a gesture, then stood in the living room watching me like I might disappear if he looked away. "You should rest," he said. "It's been a hell of a day." "I don't want to rest." I moved to the windows, looking out at the city that had witnessed my transformation from naive girl to Dante's lover, to runaway, to reluctant wife and back again. "I want to understand something." "What?" "Why you never moved on. 3 years, Dante. You could have had anyone. Models, actresses, women who wouldn't run, who wouldn't cause you this much trouble." I turned to face him. "Why me?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he crossed to the bar, poured 2 drinks, and handed me one. "You want the truth? The real truth? Not the version where I'm the powerful mob boss who always gets what he wants?" I nodded. "You terrified me." He took a long drink. "From the moment I saw you at that gala, serving drinks with this look on your face like you were braced for the world to hit you, I knew you were dangerous. Not to my life. I've had hundreds of people try to kill me, but dangerous too." He gestured vaguely at his chest. "Whatever this is. This thing that's supposed to be dead in men like me. Your heart. If I have one." His smile was self-deprecating. "You made me feel things I didn't think I was capable of feeling. Hope. Fear. Something close to happiness. And then you left. And I realized I'd rather feel nothing than feel what your absence did to me. So you watched me. For 3 years. I told myself I was making sure you were safe. That it was just Surveillance. Making sure you were happy, that you'd found what you were looking for. He set down his glass. But the truth is, I couldn't let go. Couldn't accept that I'd had something real and destroyed it through my own bullshit possessiveness. And Brad was a wake-up call. Seeing you married to him, wearing his ring, playing house. His jaw tightened. It made me realize I had two choices. Let you go for real, move on with my life, or fight to get you back and do it right this time. And the money? Brad's theft? Was any of that real? Oh, it was real. He really is that stupid. Dante moved closer, stopping just short of touching me. But I may have encouraged certain discoveries, made sure the Calabresi's found out what he'd done, arranged for you to be working the night I'd be at Bella Vista. Anger flashed through me. You set this whole thing up. I created an opportunity, a crisis that would force you to face the truth about your marriage, about who you really are, about what you really want. His hand came up, fingers ghosting along my jaw. Was it manipulative? Yes. Do I regret it? Not even a little, because it brought you back to me. I should have been furious, should have slapped him again, told him he was everything I'd run from and worse. But standing there with his hand on my face and his eyes holding mine, I felt something else entirely. Relief. Relief that the choice had been made for me. That I didn't have to keep pretending. That I could finally stop running from the only person who'd ever really seen me. I hate that you did this, I said softly. I know. I hate that you manipulated everything. I know. And I hate, my voice broke, that it worked, that I'm here willingly, that some part of me is glad you came back for me. His thumb traced my lower lip, the gesture achingly familiar. So where does that leave us? I don't know. I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch despite myself. I can't go back to Brad. Can't pretend anymore that I'm someone I'm not. But I don't know if I can do this either. Be yours the way you want me to be, then we figure it out. Together. He pressed his forehead to mine. No more running. No more lies. Just us. However messy that is. That's terrifying. I know. His breath mingled with mine. But you've always been brave, Bella. Braver than me. Braver than anyone I've known. You can do terrifying. I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. The contract. The 30 days. Do we still need that? Do you want it? I thought about it. About safety nets and exit strategies and all the ways I'd spent 3 years protecting myself from feeling too much. No, I whispered. No contracts. No time limits. Just, let's see what happens. Day by day. The smile that crossed his face was genuine, unguarded. The most beautiful thing I'd ever seen on him. Day by day, he agreed. I can work with that. He kissed me then, slowly, carefully, like I was something precious instead of something owned. And I kissed him back, tasting 3 years of loneliness and longing, and the terrible joy of coming home to a place that had never stopped being mine. When we finally broke apart, the sun was setting over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. What happens now? I asked. Now, he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Now we have dinner. We talk. We figure out how to make this work without destroying each other. His smile turned wicked. And maybe, if you're ready, we remember what it was like when it was good between us. Heat flooded through me. Maybe. I'll take maybe. He led me toward the kitchen, his hand in mine. It's better than no. Better than running. Better than 3 years of watching you from a distance. And as we moved through the penthouse that would become our home, not a cage, not a prison, but a place where 2 damaged people could maybe, possibly, learn to love each other without setting everything on fire, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was fragile, terrifying, liable to shatter at any moment, but it was real. And for now, that was enough. 6 months later, the wedding was small. Just Marcus, Lorenzo, and a handful of people from Dante's world who'd become, impossibly, my world too. I wore ivory silk instead of white, a dress that flowed like water and made me feel less like a bride and more like someone stepping into the life they were always meant for. Brad had sent a card from Montana, stilted, formal, but wishing me well. He'd found work at a small firm, met a woman who didn't have mob bosses in her past. I was happy for him, in the way you're happy for people who were never quite right for you, but deserved happiness anyway. Dante stood at the altar in the private chapel he'd rented, looking at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. And when I reached him, when his hand closed around mine, I felt the rightness of it settle into my bones. "You sure about this?" he murmured as the officiant began. "Terrified," I admitted. "But yes, I'm sure. Good." His smile was soft, private, meant only for me. "Because I'm not letting you go. Not this time. Not ever." And I believed him. Because some loves were easy, safe, comfortable, and some loves were dangerous, consuming. The kind that burned so bright they left scars. But standing there with Dante's hand in mine and our impossible future stretching ahead, I finally understood that I'd been wrong about one thing. Love wasn't supposed to feel like drowning. It was supposed to feel like learning to breathe underwater, terrifying at first, but eventually as natural as anything else. And I was ready to dive in. "I love you," I whispered, as the officiant asked for our vows. "I know." Dante's thumb traced circles on my hand. "I love you too, Bella. Always have. Always will." The kiss when it came was a promise. Of fights and reconciliations, of danger and safety found in each other. Of a love that wasn't perfect, but was perfectly, completely ours. And outside, the city glittered with 1,000 other stories, 1,000 other lives. But this one, chaotic, complicated, absolutely terrifying, was mine. And I wouldn't have traded it for anything.